Tabin used his bare hands to pick up a mouse to look closely at it. It looked cute, but what surprised him the most was that the size of the white mouse in the nurturing Holy Land was different, 4 times larger than a normal mouse. The 2 young men on the other side flexed their ass muscles, channeled their spiritual energy to cover the 2 mice and transformed the rotation of spiritual energy around their fur. At first everything was quite smooth. One boy had just covered about 30% of the black hair from his ass to his head. Suddenly Teacher Niem appeared from nowhere next to him, looming like a doorman, making the contestants' arms and legs tremble. Right. He tried to squeeze the black color to 60%. The teacher leaned closer and whispered, "Hey kid. I see your hands are shaking a bit." His teeth and lips were about to collide and make a loud noise, but he still tried to maintain his posture, despite the sweat pouring down his face and body, stiffened his muscles and asked the teacher again, "What did you say?" "I'm not shaking at all. Be strong. Afraid it will bite you or something." Mr. Niem shouted loudly, causing him to jump in shock and psychological shock. The swirling spiritual energy made a snap, causing the mouse to turn back to white in an instant. As soon as he let out a scream, the teacher brutally slapped the whip on his back and shouted, "Not qualified." One contestant was eliminated. The teacher turned to the remaining student who could only pinch the mouse's butt. Patting the stick in his hand, he was shaking nervously, and the teacher was talking next to him. "Only 15 minutes left, so hurry up." He held his gloved wrist, his eyes closed tightly, trying to hurry up and help your father. If he didn't hurry up he would be hit in the back. As tight as a string. Suddenly there was a rustling sound like high-voltage electricity. Unlike the weak rings of energy that made the young men strain like they were constipated, Tabin did not need to use gloves to create a large amount of energy surrounding the mouse and the surrounding space. He looked like an electrically charged cloud, causing the group of students behind him to point. Most people think that his way of doing things is problematic, and it is not necessary to use as much energy as in combat when training a master. Even if someone speaks up, it's not necessarily true that the young man in black did what he did wrong. In the teacher's training book, it is said that the key issue in using semen to dye hair is to accurately grasp the amount of semen you put out and control it to stimulate it to change pigment cells. Even if you do it gently like the students do, it's fine, or you can stimulate it vigorously. The only difference is the time and difficulty, but Tabin's way of doing it is definitely more difficult. Tabin always did it without explanation. After 20 minutes, his hand still had enough spiritual power. He withdrew his strength, leaving a thick layer of smoke on the platform, but the white mouse was nowhere to be seen, because it had changed color from white to 7 rainbow colors that looked like a limited mouse. By the way, while changing hair color, Tabin also added a little bit of hair to give her a flirty hairstyle, so that night she went out to West Lake with beautiful girls. Needless to say, the young man was scared to death. Even in just a few minutes, he was able to dye his hair many colors, and also make it grow longer and style it. "Let's play alone, whoever is free." Teacher Niem walked over to look at the mouse without understanding anything. It seemed like it didn't even know that it had just been used as a model for this painful, ugly hairstyle. Only the teacher silently commented that the dye was very beautiful, and that his hair was still shiny and smooth as if he had just come back from the salon. Reaching out to try to touch it, a small electric current shot out towards Mr. Niem, preventing him from touching the mutated mouse. It turned out that the person who changed the fur color also gave it an extra layer of gas on the outside. Take this mouse out and explain to the students that candidate number 44 did not use the usual method of stimulating toxin contamination to dye his hair. He used the element fixation method to change the characteristics of the mouse from the inside out, thereby affecting the color of the fur on the surface as we see here. Due to not having enough time and not having a clear form yet, there is no doubt that the mutated white mouse has become a multi-element mouse. Throw bullets. After all the arguing about who was right and who was wrong, the students' eyes widened in disbelief that someone could actually transform the attribute levels in less than half an hour. Furthermore, can it be done with 2 hands? Not even supporting materials are available. Damn it, why are you competing now? Why do you say that by following the textbook correctly you can pass grade 1? This guy is the one who compiled the textbook, right? Teacher Niem is not as obvious as the students, but he also silently evaluates the person in front of him. Wondering if this is a new student who is just now taking the exam or something I have never met before. Or is this the disciple of some old monster who has a private meeting? At such a young age, he already has talent, not to mention a very suitable demeanor. I've been knocking children's heads for a long time, but I've never met a student who makes me so satisfied. The teacher couldn't help but smile under his mustache. Notice number 44 has passed the test, qualified to pass all standards of levels 1 to 6, so I decided to break the rules and let you take the level 7 test now. There was a murmur from the student's side. Am I dizzy? Looks like Teacher Niem just laughed. I'm not saying if I heard it right, it's level 7 setting and checking. If I pass, wouldn't it mean I just took the first exam and passed the entrance exam? The teacher solemnly took away the cage containing a few white mice and gave a large cage containing a pet animal with red eyes flashing from under the earthen cage. Speaking of the content of the level 7 assessment, this one is the Blood Mist Soul, a level 7 pet with a high-level system. Within 8 hours, candidates must tame this pet and enhance it to a higher level to pass level 7. Looking at the beast wandering around emitting red gas in the iron cage, the students realized that this was a strange beast belonging to the demon system and good at mental control techniques. It has an evil nature with the knack of corroding people's hearts. If tamed incorrectly, it will backfire, causing brain damage and going crazy on the spot. Dare to let a first-level exam candidate fight this monster, truly worthy of Teacher Niem's reputation as the living king of hell. Whoa cha-cha, that's really interesting. Tabin swirled spiritual energy around him. 8 hours was too much, he only needed 5 hours. Within 5 hours he enhanced and subdued this pet beast. As soon as the cage was brought to the ground, the ghostly blood mist hooked its black claws into the iron bars, opened its jagged fanged mouth and let out a roar of authority. Its ugly mouth emitted a strong smell of blood, causing the students to quickly step back, some covering their mouths and others covering their noses in alertness. The blood fog ghost's ability to attack the spirit is extremely terrifying. The pet skill inherited from its bloodline with the name of the evil spirit of its father can directly penetrate into the living body to devour the spirit of its prey. From there, all physical attacks are neutralized because the spirit is completely exhausted and left to rot. Unless there is a divine or lightning-type treasure nearby, a nourisher who has just reached level 7 will not dare to casually tease this kind of monster. But that young man in black is not afraid at all. She looked at his straight back and saw Niem put him inside, wondering how he would handle it. Tabin's eyes stared at the ghostly blood mist in front of him, gently saying let the horse out of the stable, he was ready before coming here. Needless to say, as soon as the evil beast saw prey, it immediately opened its mouth and quickly rushed forward to attack with excitement, immediately unleashing the ultimate evil spirit of its father and claws that always wanted to grab Tabin and penetrate his mind. No matter how far the animal scratched, Tabin easily dodged it. He leaned left and right, ducked down and looked up, then jumped up while the monster was still searching for the human below the ground. He had read about this type of beast in the library and knew that this beast needed to be taught with lightning-type treasures. Tabin jumped on its head. It turned out that he didn't have a lightning system in his hand, but if this animal wanted, he could still open its eyes. Phew! Tabin's hand spread out 5 fingers and placed it on the animal's head. He transmitted his lightning directly into Blood Mist Ghost's head, injecting the image of the majestic giant thunder god into its mind as if it were right before its eyes. Blood Mist's single eye soon widened, and his pupils shrank in fear. It clearly saw the entire appearance of the lightning god, let out a few frightened screams, then ignored the black man and went to the iron bars, shaking violently, trying to get away from him. Looking at his face, he knew that Blood Mist Ghost had just gone through an earth-shattering mental shock. He didn't bother to talk to Tabin anymore, so he freely walked to the counter where all kinds of strange herbs were displayed. After taming, the next step will be strengthening. Standing in front of dozens of medicinal herbs, Tabin picked up a green one and a purple one that he had read about in the book Yu Bak Luyen. It says how to upgrade a bloodline demon pet below level 9 and what combination is needed to suppress its essence. Taking this opportunity, Tabin can test the knowledge he has, and train pet animals in a completely new way so that in the future he can train the little skeleton to a higher level. Tabin's hands separated the essence of the 2 medicinal herbs in his hands using his essence to refine them. In his right hand is the grass that condenses the soul of the fire element and spreads the lightning of the lightning element. Blood Mist Ghost's weakness is that it is extremely afraid of lightning-type attacks. So Tabin wants to overcome this weakness of it. Bringing the essence from 2 newly refined herbs together, they swirled and blended into a ball that was half green and half purple. Instead of finding a way to let it open its mouth to eat, Tabin simply threw the strengthening ball at the ghostly blood mist that was screaming to escape. Making it scream even more fiercely, the squealing continued until as its entire body was enveloped in blue and purple aura. Lift the animal up high and gradually turn it silver white. It's not its fur and skin that is changing color, but the gloomy blood mist that is emitting light. The purple-haired girl covering her face was startled when she realized that this light only happened when the pet animal showed signs of evolution. The gloomy blood mist became increasingly white and hovered high above, looking like a stream of white smoke with an unknown shape. The entire area around Tabin and the beasts soon opened up in white mist, but he was still focusing on injecting his energy in the essence of the newly enhanced medicinal herbs to change this beast's attributes. Tabin looked mentally stable, as if he had gone through countless difficult cases, and his techniques were so mature. Teacher Niem was even more certain that this young man was not like a normal person but had a strong person behind him, where the light covering the gloomy blood mist gradually blurred, revealing the shape of the beast a little more clearly. Soon, I saw its whole body change to green and run into golden autumn leaves. The cub's previous horns have been replaced by a pair of large, strong, golden yellow horns that look powerful and of extremely high quality, and behind them there is green fur that flows gently like a flame. The blood mist ghost has evolved into a lightning giant ghost. To be honest, it now looks quite similar to the genie in the Alibaba story. The students realized the huge change and couldn't help but ask each other why. How can that be? What is this evolutionary path? Why have they never heard of it? It can change the ferocious appearance of the blood mist gloomy soul to a bit of clear majesty. Tabin clasped his hands and explained that during the training process, I had added a bit of lightning to neutralize the internal impurities of the blood fog ghost, thereby suppressing its demonic bloodline and reducing its bloodlust. Now this crimson will no longer resist lightning or divine attacks. But combining such a strong brand attribute will certainly have disadvantages. Even though he's not bloodthirsty, his temper is as hot as ice cream. Whenever he sees someone itchy, he'll say if you like looking at him or not. Or like right now, I scratched straight into the cage I was trapped in, causing it to shake violently. Compared to just now, the blood mist ghost was only able to grasp the iron bars and shake it to get out. The giant ghost was now able to attack and escape on its own. The students saw that it was about to rush out and attack, so they sneaked up and down, telling each other to run quickly or else they would stay and eat. Teacher Niem aimed at the cage that was about to be unable to withstand the beast's destructive power and also put on spiritual gloves and solemnly prepared. After the lightning colossus evolved to a higher level, its combat power was much stronger than normal. Before it could escape, he had to try to find a way to suppress it to avoid endangering the students. But Mr. Niem did not expect that this giant dragon was faster and stronger than he thought. Before long, it was able to push the iron bars to the sides with both hands, appearing before his eyes. Teacher Niem stood outside first. He raised his sharp blue hand, intending to attack and flatten his head. And the teacher hadn't finished using his energy to suppress a powerful beast like it, so he could only watch the lightning giant spirit attack him. However, with Tabin here, he certainly won't allow this to happen. His hand, filled with electric rays of red lightning, made a clicking sound. He growled and spoke cheekily. "Do you want to try the taste of lightning again?" He pushed the rays out of his hand with his own energy so that it spread into the air. In just a few seconds it surrounded the lightning giant spirit, reminding the beast that he was still behind it and not to be rash. The evil beast let out a loud scream, sweated all over its body, then knelt down and trembled at Tabin's feet. Being obedient is no different than a puppy, not even daring to look up at him, let alone protest. The scene before my eyes was like an illusion, even teacher Niem couldn't say anything. The students ran out to the hallway and saw the beast being suppressed, then nervously turned around and mumbled. It was so dangerous. Luckily it was successfully controlled. Tabin took a step out of the cage but still did not dare to move the giant spirit, so he calmly asked teacher Niem what he thought. With this, he showed enough to pass the level 7 teacher training exam, but the teacher said no. What a joke, I don't know. The question only asked to strengthen the pet beast, but this person took it one step further, directly causing the blood mist to evolve into the extremely perfect form of the giant thunder spirit. Another 2 times of taming animals is very good, requires very little effort and is different from others. With this level of proficiency, asking whether I passed the exam or not is honestly a bit modest, so Mr. Niem changed his way of addressing me to equal status. The way he demonstrates his ability is almost on par with the top level 9 trainers today. Teacher Niem's recognition seemed to awaken a few children who were afraid to run away. They wondered why they had the opportunity to see someone rise from level 1 to level 9 in just one day. Just how divine is this contestant? Suddenly, from above, the laughter of an old man with silvery white hair was heard, clasping his hands and floating with his energy. He observed everything from beginning to end, not sparing praise that it was truly unique. The old man had a long white beard that was longer than his hair, constantly praising and praising to make the students immediately recognize that this energy belonged to the vice president of the Association of Master Training. Teacher Niem saw the old man coming and bowed respectfully, but the old man was aiming straight at Tabin, so he just said that he had his own business and didn't need to worry about it. Looking at the familiar way old Bach used his mental force to lift Tabin, teacher Niem suddenly realized that this young man seemed to be a disciple of old Bach's vice president of the Association of Master Training. If so, what he showed today can be completely explained reasonably. Even though it's so big, these things are a matter of course. Elder Bach took Tabin into a separate classroom without anyone before speaking, inviting the distinguished guest from Longjiang to take off his mask. Tabin didn't know who this was, so he remained silent. Old Bach seemed to understand his doubts, gently brushing his beard and smiling, saying please don't be surprised. Normally, there aren't many young people with such extraordinary skills, so I immediately recognized it. You're the one who trained Little Skeleton, Dark Dog Dragon and Silverbone Star Moon Dragon, right? The mischievous pet shop owner, Tabin, comes from Longjiang. If you know your identity, there's no need to hide it. Tabin raised his hand to take off his mask, complimented him on a detailed investigation, and then called him here so that if anything happened, he wouldn't hesitate. Old man Bach tilted his head to look at him from behind him and asked briefly, have you heard about the 4 kings? 4 kings is not about 4 princes but 4 great beasts. This is the strongest ferocious beast in human history so far, known on the Blue Star as Good and Evil, Original Master, 7 Sins and Crossbank. Not to mention their strength, they also understand human language, have extremely cunning and aggressive personalities, and have destroyed countless human provinces and cities. The wall was over 100 meters high, and it took a lot of effort for people to build it, and it was mercilessly trampled under their feet. The fresh blood flowing freely in the cities they attacked was enough to drown all humanity, like turning into a river of death through hell. They are the enemies at the top of humanity's list on this blue star. Bach Lao lowered his voice and looked at Tabin with serious eyes. Each of the 4 kings had strength not below the destiny level. Tabin was surprised and asked Bach Lao again if there was a mistake. Is it really a heavenly destiny? That is the highest realm in the legendary 3rd level. Even though Su Bin has a systematic training system and has read countless informative books, he honestly has never heard of the Beast King before. So when he heard that such a powerful creature lived on this planet, he didn't understand why the land here could harbor such a terrible beast. Even so, 4 cards are enough for a farm table. Thinking back, I had a very strong level system and had the opportunity to set foot in many different civilizations, but I had only just entered the first stage of the legendary level of the Kanhai realm. If these guys are so dangerous, why have I never heard anything about them raiding human territory before? Old White spoke slowly, because a long time ago, there was a great emperor of the human race who seriously injured the four kings. The great emperor used his own life to seal the king under the abyss cave. Currently, because of the legendary young people of the four great regions, from that time until now they have no way to escape to harass the human world, and cannot violate their territory. We are right. But if Old Man Bach mentioned this today, it certainly wasn't simply to tell a legend. Tabin thought the only possibility was that the seal on the abyss cave had fallen. But the old man said he was not sure, because once that place fell, all cities on the planet would be forced to open a level 1 combat alert. The opposite problem is that the abyss cave seal is not unusual. But Hoang Ku detected the phenomenon of strange beasts approaching areas where they usually did not appear and marked this event as clearly problematic. Recalling the incident of the unstable train ride to Tan Quang City the other day, Tabin mistakenly said that he had partially seen the strange phenomenon of the beast that Bach Lao had just mentioned. Both trains were nearly destroyed and there were serious casualties due to the invasion of beasts. If Tabin had grasped one corner of the story, everything would have been easier. Bach Lao nodded and said that this phenomenon was beginning to threaten the safety of people in the cities, and it seemed that the city's security department needed to be upgraded more urgently. But the main thing that Bach Lao wanted to say after telling Tabin this information was that he suspected that the abnormal phenomenon could not simply be considered as a natural disaster or storm that could just come and be welcomed. That's why I took this opportunity to distribute invitations throughout the teacher training conference with the purpose of summoning experts here to prepare a response policy. He crossed his arms, tilted his head and asked the old man, "Is your association for training teachers really long-armed? Do you want to take care of everything?" Bach Lao gently stroked his beard as if receiving a compliment, thinking that it was understandable. Mr. Bin here is taking the teacher training exam, so he probably feels it more or less, right? Compared to war pet masters who only pay attention to attacks, launching fatal spells or certain kills, trainers are more focused on controlling the pet. Speak clearly and pay attention to the plans and ways to apply energy to create strength. After all, we trainers are people who have been given abilities. Hearing such authority, why doesn't the Master Training Association directly send people to Hoang Ku to investigate? Bach Lao told him that actually, when he first discovered the unusual problem, he had already ordered the relevant cities to send their reclamation teams to investigate. But Hoang Ku has a large area and ferocious beasts are flying everywhere, so the results cannot come so quickly. So do you have any clue about this? Frankly speaking, I have very few clues, so there are no measures to help solve this problem. Tabin suggested that instead of sitting here thinking, it would be better to seize the time to improve combat power. I want to learn the trainer's spiritual awakening skill, but I've flipped through all the heavenly dragon books and still can't find any books or instructions to help cultivate this skill. Hearing this, Bach Lao burst into laughter. It's true that young people are different. Old bamboo shoots grow correctly. Master trainers from level 9 and above can learn the spiritual opening skill because only high-level people go to the headquarters of the Master Trainer Association to learn secret techniques, also known as secret skills. Of course there isn't one in the library of Thien Long Academy. If there is, it's definitely a fake. So let's get straight to the point. Tabin lowered his voice and asked if he thought I had the ability to become a level 9 trainer? Oh, speaking of that strength, I know you are completely capable of it. At the same time, he can also become the second person in history to be both a cultivator and a highly skilled war master. Plus, someone who can reach the legendary and holy level must be cool. Tabin's eyes widened and he asked again, was he the second person? Even though there is a degree system but still a latecomer, Tabin immediately wondered who was the first in history. Looking at Tabin's eyes, Bach Lao nodded and thought, he guessed right in his heart. The only person who reached the legendary level and the pinnacle of Holy Spirit at the same time, resounding in history books, is none other than the great emperor of the human race. The person who used his strength to directly oppose the four great beasts, heard that someone quite similar to him was so strong. Tabin immediately excitedly told this old man to quickly help him learn to open the spirit and not waste time. Bach Lao refused and the young man eagerly entered immediately. I told you earlier that only instructors level 9 and above can learn. Currently, your status is only level 6 trainer. According to regulations, if you want to reach level 7, in addition to taking an exam, you also have to write a 50,000-word thesis. That's the number of words in an article. If you want to get to level 8, you have to write 2 articles. To get to level 9, it doubles to 4 articles. Tabin heard that I was in pain. I collapsed. But the most important thing was that he used his inner strength to continue asking boldly. Hey Bach Lao, since you consider me such an important person, wouldn't it be quick and easy to just let me go through the back door? Wait until I become the light of humanity, then I can just use my hands to read the secret book as much as I want? Oh, this guy is funny. I already said no. Bach Lao turned away and reminded this young man that the more urgent the situation, the more he had to follow the rules. If the superiors always think that the strong are given priority in all aspects, then wouldn't the weak have no place in this world? Then everything will become chaotic, let alone being the light of humanity. Tabin ruffled his hair. It's been a long time since he met someone who openly opposed him like that. This old man respects principles too much. Part of him wanted to go through the back door because he had a lot of experience in fighting. But he told me to sit down and write 7 essays, but my white hair and beard fell into the hole and lay down. Suddenly, Tabin remembered the girl at Thien Long Academy, Chu Lin Dong, who seemed to have a knack for this, so he had to go find her. Thanks to thinking of ways to pass the thesis in an intensive review course to get the secret to spiritual enlightenment, for example. When Tabin was having a hard time plotting dirty tricks to get the secret spiritual skill, the Trung Lin Dong he was thinking about threw the dozenth piece of paper into the trash. At this moment, he held his head and felt hopeless. Medicine. Her pen scribbled on the paper, drafting so many options but still undecided on which one was the final one. Putting his hands up to support himself, Trung Lin Dong complained that it was too difficult and could never be done. My own actual combat evidence is too little to write about. With my little experience, there is no way to complete this project. In another part of the academy, the sound of someone talking on the phone was heard. I have received your wine. It has been brewing for 20 years, and when I drink it, I feel my armpit twitching. The other person laughed cheerfully and praised teacher Din Zan Fong for being a wine connoisseur. So the other person hesitantly asked, what happened to what I asked you before? While talking happily while resting his feet on the back of a student kneeling on the ground, another student ran to find and politely greeted Din Zan Fong. He put on a kind face and asked Tungu, do you have any good news to tell me? That girl was the girl Tabin had bumped into in the library. Now he hesitantly said he was sorry. That young man's strength is too strong, hidden too well, there is no way to see his information at all. The young girl who made a footstool for Din Zan Fong suddenly let out a blood-popping sound, because he had heard the news so much that he released his energy without restraint, hitting her and injuring her internal organs. The pair of glasses became clearly dangerous, spitting out the words trash from his polite mouth. Din Zan Fong started cursing at this little thing, and if it can't be done, then what good can you expect to do? Tungu did not dare to look up and mumbled that the person took the level 1 test but easily passed the level 7 test. Din Zan Fong took a sip of wine and criticized the information as nothing to pay attention to. It's just a basic thing that everyone already knows. Isn't there any other interesting news? Does he mean he wants to know that old man Bach has come to take that young man in black away? Tungu looked up and asked softly, as expected, successfully attracting Din Zan Fong's attention. Could it be that the old man from the Master Training Association also looked at this golden egg? It seems I've waited too patiently, told Tungu to step down. Din Zan Fong called a man named Long Sun over. A blonde-haired man around 40 years old wearing formal clothes used floating spiritual energy to come to Din Zan Fong. As if accustomed to the academy teacher's languid demeanor, he shouted loudly and clearly appeared. There's a golden egg that wants to fly out of here. Follow the old rules and help me persuade him to turn around and leave. There's no limit to his tricks and he can do whatever he wants as long as that guy becomes enlightened. Van Long Sun with the title of Lion King, middle level 9 strategy, empty his hands on the ground with a happy smile of someone who has not been able to fight and kill for a long time. The lake is loud and clear, you can now leave immediately. As soon as he reached the outside area, Tabin immediately opened the system panel to take a look at what was in the store right now. In addition to all kinds of strange treasures, he searched for things with control capabilities such as animal traps in the system. It's unclear what will happen next, but he's rich in points and money now, so just buy a few in advance to be sure. Tabin looked at the series of names and functions and pondered. The average animal trap costs 10,000 energy with 75% catching level 7 wild beasts, 50% catching level 8 wild beasts, 25% catching level 9 wild beasts but only 1.25% catching king level wild beasts. High-end animal traps cost up to 1 million energy points, allowing 75% to catch level 9 wild animals and 10% to capture king level animals. Of course, Tabin leans toward the high-level qualifier with a higher percentage of king-level traps. 1 million energy points seems worth the trade-off. The item selection system is a tantalizing type, always appearing randomly. If he passes by and doesn't choose, he will spend 100 points each time he spins without saying anything. If he buys the same item he has seen before, he will have to spend twice as many points. Saying there is nothing missing is just a lie. Having temporarily finished with the tools, Tabin found Trung Lin Dong to help him pass the stormy essay round. In the past, he never asked people's daughters carefully. He only remembered their names and didn't even know what class they were in. Just as she was about to enter the instructor's class information to find her back, someone's thick forearm was affectionately resting on her shoulder with her muscles clearly tensed. The owner of the arm greeted, "Hello little brother," from above. But Tabin was not very excited. He has never been someone who likes intimate contact with people. The gloved hand continued to clench. The big brother, 4 times the size of Tabin, was clearly showing his authority by asking, "Hey, what were you talking about with Mr. Bach of the Master Training Association just now?" Tabin closed his eyes patiently, coldly said he didn't know, and stayed away from me. Having never heard someone openly chase him away, he frowned and showed a bit of boredom and tension. It seemed like this guy didn't understand the situation, so let me help you. Before you could scream, "Do you know who your father is?" Passers-by were attracted by the brilliant aura coming from Long Zan. Standing in the middle of the street looking majestic, don't wonder why people are whispering, with such an overwhelming performance, perhaps he's worthy of a title, but that's not enough. Looking at Tabin's physical appearance, everyone is worried about Tabin. Being unlucky enough to get involved with that man makes life difficult these days. While pretending to be indifferent, suddenly Fuang Longsun's vision suddenly turned upside down and was full of confusion. "Hey, I'm holding that kid's shoulder. Why is he flying upside down now?" Tabin quickly let him know by smashing his large body onto the ground, causing it to crack into a large area. He used it completely with his bare hands, leaning over Fuang Longzan's body and slamming it down, which was no different from impacting him. A child. When he lay on his back on the ground and looked up at the young man holding his hand, Longsun still didn't understand what was happening to him. It didn't matter. Before he could understand Tabin, he withdrew his hand from his body, straightened the hem of his shirt, and ignored the camera's comments. Oh my god, it's so easy to be defeated at the rank of title, to be defeated so easily by a young man in his 20s? Having just received a warning blow, Longsun still smiled very well, lying on the ground, muttering to the person above, specifically Tabin. "No wonder I didn't realize what your cultivation level was. Did you use some secret to hide your spiritual power?" After finishing the sentence, Fuang Longsun stood up, gritted his teeth and climbed up to declare war. "No matter who comes, you will welcome him. If you touch, you will touch," which is his motto. If he were a person who knew how to hide his energy, Fuang Longsun would not compare to someone with his energy, but would call out several summoning spaces at once behind him. With a cunning smile, he said that now I will make you an opponent of the same level and fight with all my might. But does Fuang Longsun's strategy have anything more than taking the quantity of quality enemies? Go out, red and yellow lion. From the 4 space gates, the lions fiercely bend their bodies and place their paws outward. They look intently at the enemy in front of them, leisurely observing for a long time, extremely obedient to their master. Attack without rushing. The pet beast has a large muscular shape and the wings of a dragon, becoming a sightseeing object that causes excitement for the surrounding crowd. Hey, is that the red gold lion with the level 9 ferocious beast bloodline known as the Crazy Lion, the king of all ferocious beasts? Someone said, that's true, but with that name, it shouldn't have wings. Why are there two pairs here? Fuang Long's son enjoyed the people's idyllic behavior and began to scream, let me tell you, son. Since Luke Heng Sung was still a newborn two-colored lion, the flesh and blood of the royal beast Min Long Vong was implanted directly into its body. A finished product with only 1/1000th of the nourishing blood concentration, doesn't that sound delicious? Already invincible when fighting on land, it is now even more powerful with its vast wings. No one can survive their 4 bloody mouths. The big kids must let them play together. Tabin just learned that there is a golden dog that has not been summoned to the yard for a long time, Thien Long Kuyan. As soon as Thien Long Kuyan appeared, he didn't know how to show any mercy, so he scooped up the 2 eye-catching animals at his feet and kicked them around like a cheap toy. The owner of Long Sun and the 2 remaining green onions looked at that scene in bewilderment. Where did this yellow-painted dog come from? At Thien Long Kuyan's feet, 4 unfortunate lions were soon piled up. It placed its claws like a trophy mark on the crowd that only had good looks. Strongly opening his mouth and roaring loudly, Long Sun's face quickly turned pale as he mumbled curses at how the ragged dog was able to suppress his group of lions so easily. Suddenly he stopped cursing when he realized that Thien Long Kuyan did not copy the roaring lion, but this overwhelming aura of the king beast. Smile, why don't you laugh anymore and I'll take a look. Just now, you were smiling like the main character. Did you have something to say? As soon as Tabin's golden dog closed his mouth and blew smoke, it was his turn to speak sarcastically. Fuang Long's son quickly backed away, tremblingly raised his hand to ask for peace. The arrogance from before had completely disappeared. Now he only dared to say that it was a misunderstanding. Brother, it was all just a misunderstanding. But there was nothing to say slowly. The old man stuck his head out to see the scene where Boss Tabin used the big guy without bothering to intervene. On the contrary, he stroked his beard excitedly as he heard Long Sun scream loudly below like a young girl seeing a cockroach in the room. Third-rate shit compared to first-rate chocolate. Plus that died dog, it's so interesting. Under the afternoon sunlight, inside the specialized experimental building of the teacher of class number 8 Theme 2, there is a young dragon, also known as a wild 5th-level baby dragon, raising its purple eyes to look at the people outside. Grid. He silently looked at the person the 2 students brought him to, the instructor, the pet used for the test tomorrow. Din Zanfang drew the solution from several purple bottles, neatly arranged it in a gray box, pushed it into a specialized cylinder, then returned to the cage and injected it straight into the baby dragon's body. Its painful gurgling noises quickly turned into croaking sounds as it transformed into a terrifying, goblin-like form. Its red eyes lost reason, the hair on its body stood up, and it bared its fangs and claws as if it wanted to jump out and attack people. Din Zanfang was not moved at all, ignoring the young dragon's violent disturbance in the cage, creating a rumbling sound so loud that he did not know that someone was coming behind him. Fuang Long's son stood there for a moment before Zanfang recognized an acquaintance and asked, "Hey, why did the Lion King finish his work so quickly? That golden egg was so fragile that it broke easily, so he came back earlier than expected?" Long's son collapsed onto the floor in a kneeling position and his white eyes looked up to the sky. He looked like he had been led into a state of complete unconsciousness. Sure enough, behind him, the blonde-haired guy lying flat on his back was Tabin, his whole body black, looming behind, making a sound that the golden egg was coming to find him. Isn't he handsome? Din Zanfang quickly assessed the situation with long, narrow eyes behind glasses, his mouth quickly showing a permanent smile. Clasping his hands behind his back to act polite, he politely greeted Boss Hua Kuang, "Nice to meet you." The 2 hands in the sleeves slid behind him to quickly touch the watch when Zanfang thoughtfully asked how the walk at the academy was going. Reaching out to squeeze the tracking device attached to the instructor's card, Tabin looked straight at him and replied, "Overall it was fine and happy, except for being monitored all the time." But I don't know if your students saw the instructor they always respected and admired, using tricks to add ingredients to the pet animals used for the test. How would they feel? The two students did not show much surprise, not even Din Zonfang's smiling and amused appearance. He put his hands on his hips, chuckled as if he had just heard something funny, then suddenly turned around and kicked the male student in the middle of his stomach. Before he could finish howling in pain, Din Zonfang turned around and punched the female student in the face like an enemy. Contrary to the usual expressions of injured people, after being abused, these two children immediately knelt at the teacher's feet and respectfully responded when he said, "My shoes are dirty, kids." Bin has met many opponents, but not this type of narcissistic stunt. He stared blankly at the clown who continued to act out psychological manipulation. The students smiled brightly when Din Zonfang asked them if they blamed the teacher. If this little difficulty is unbearable, how can you cope with the harsh world out there? We were so upset that the teacher loved him so he fought, there was no way we could blame him. I don't see that guy who likes to worry about money. Din Zonfang raised his horrifyingly perverted face and raised his hand towards Bin, telling him to see for himself. Would the students find it offensive or would they worship and praise a teacher like him? Suddenly, there was the loud footsteps of dozens of people pouring into the room at the same time. Bin became the center of a chaotic circle of new people pouring in, including names with titles flying above. He sighed and mumbled, accidentally seeing this guy's filth. Somehow he missed that stubborn old man so terribly. What is this trick of crushing people with meat? Are you planning on killing people? Still with that meaningless smile, Din Zonfang smiled and denied shamelessly. I don't need to shut my mouth, because no matter what you say to the outside, people will believe that it is me who is training the top level 9 master. But look at my harem and understand that today you will realize for yourself how powerful the battle pet master is. Even if you are a defense officer, you have to humble yourself and beg me to practice for you. Do you want to taste what begging feels like? Zonfang's lips curled into a smile. Come join us. I can turn you into the strongest trainer in history. Good offer, shut the fuck up. Bin's unsuccessful hand suddenly jumped out to block the dogmatic pervert teacher's throat. Cursing his fingers, he pressed the near-eyed man's head firmly to the ground, without a but. Bin's face clearly shows his unhappiness. My family has a dog, but if it barks too much, I will muzzle it. Someone's shadow suddenly flashed past the pinch in front of the crowd that had not yet started the match. Bin's black cloak bypassed a few people, grabbed Din Zonfang's head and pressed it hard to the ground. In the past, Bin acted decisively but rarely took action on his own. This time, no matter how hard Din Zonfang struggled, he couldn't escape the hand that was holding his mouth tightly, trapping the sound in his throat that couldn't escape. Both surprised and painful, he grabbed Bin's wrist but only received his cold gaze and impatient voice. Shut your mouth, whatever you say will make me nauseous. The battle pet masters were startled and shouted loudly, who was this guy who dared to attack the Grand Master like that? They were so aggressive and threatening. If you don't let go of Grand Master, if something happens to him, you'll die miserably. Threaten those who don't threaten people, but threaten people like Bin who don't know how to fear death. He glanced at his golden pupils to count the number of people who had big mouths, and just based on this, they dared to raise their voice to challenge. Bin's entire body exuded a bright yellow light of vitality, illuminating the entire area, announcing it once for everyone to hear, to avoid bothering him. If you don't want to die, then get out quickly. If you want to rush to your death, then rush up and fight. He's all for it. The group of people wearing suits stood still, covering their eyes because the sudden burst of yellow light blinded everything. More importantly, how could this young man emit a breath comparable to a level 9 Lion wargun? There were whispers in the crowd telling each other to be careful. Maybe this was a defense-level expert. After all, he was bold enough to threaten. Din Zonfang was muzzled like a dog that couldn't be rescued, so he was extremely upset. I couldn't escape for a while but the people I called still didn't dare to come out. My veins and sweat were pouring down my face. If I don't let them use my voice, there's still another way to send out the SOS signal. The crowd of barbarians suddenly heard Din Zonfang's voice ringing in their ears by transmitting spiritual energy. If you kill this crazy dog, you will be rewarded with 1 year of training, and 3 years for those who can capture it alive. I want this son of a bitch to live better than die. The generous reward successfully preys on the greedy mentality of the crowd. Especially those who are flying high above. Webtoon, Da Sat and Company Tin, are all extremely greedy people with the top level 9 reputation. What's better than taking this opportunity to break through the game's ultimate level 9 strategy with 3 years of free training? In that case, the 3 did not show any respect, raised their hands to open the teleportation space door as much as possible, and called out their pet beasts to give Bin a beating. Webtoon laughed. Haha, it's okay to just barely survive, right? Just as he was about to shake his hand so that the 3 of them could escape together, the words suddenly stuck in his throat and were cut off. A small but extremely sharp cut not only passed through Yanzun's body, but when little Ko Lao landed with his bone blade retracted, all 3 of the top level 9 guys fell to their knees. The transmission gates closed immediately, and they had to end the battle with their own lives before they even started. Blood spewed out like rain falling on the romantic scene of Bin and Din Zanfang. He didn't bother turning around, just opened his energy shield to prevent the red blood cells from falling on his body. Din Zanfang was stunned, his face pale and motionless as blood fell on his face, unable to say a word. Those people are the pinnacle of level 9 titles, not a bunch of brats. One last time, I'll repeat, if you want to die, take 1 step forward. The air around him turned cold, emitting a strong smell of death when little Ko Lao appeared behind Bin. I want to see how powerful you are. Ko Lao is no longer the tiny and despised worm of the past, his whole room exudes the majesty of a king. Just standing there silently was enough to confirm that what Bin had just said was true. Even if those people follow Din Zanfang, they still have eyes. Everyone stepped back in panic, not believing that the expert of the expert was killed in the blink of an eye so simply. What is this little skeleton? Where is it a monster from? Suddenly someone in the crowd spoke up. I've heard about this little black skeleton before. A small skeleton in the elite tournament in the Luke A region. He killed many experts of that star organization. With just that mention, many people were excited to realize that the little Ko Lao in front of them was indeed the main character of that shocking event. It's also hot for a powerful star organization to bow to a young man, but all the attention must be said to be focused on the little Ko Lao because the damage level, speed and fighting style far surpasses anything that can be fought with. The beloved master already knew. Din Zanfang also knew about that shocking news, so he began to tremble, raising his eyes to look at the young man in front of him. Is this legendary level, peerless battle pet master Bin? On the internet, people call him by the name of deity that Din Zanfang is wondering if his eyes are blind or not, but he does not see the threat clearly emanating from him. Suddenly, from his arrogant attitude, Din Zanfang immediately became a member of the Cowardly Society. He knelt on the ground, clasped his hands respectfully and spoke to Bin in a trembling voice. It's because I'm blind that I poke at you. Please, please have mercy on me and forgive this habit of mine. I'll give you everything you want. Bending down to look at Din Zanfang with an expression as if he was attracted, Bin asked if he would give him anything if he spared his life. He nodded repeatedly. As long as he could live through today, he could figure out another way. Who would have thought that his cold face would show a smile when he replied, then if you die, everything that belongs to you will belong to me, right? In the past, has anyone exchanged material things and been forgiven by Bin? There has never been an exception, but Din Zanfang didn't know, so he could only watch with eyes as people easily picked up his collar. Bin threw him into the middle of the crowd like a bag of trash, but to punish him by throwing him like that would be too simple. The surrounding people held their breath to watch what Bin said next. He spoke faintly. If everyone here has heard my story, then you probably know the pet shop I'm running. Turning around to look at Ko Lao standing there waiting for orders, Bin briefly introduced. This is a war pet raised by my god. Just one sentence from him caused the crowd to chat. Ko Lao has the lowest bloodline among the war pet lines, so his performance in the elite tournament has led to a series of questions, especially about his origin. Someone spoke frankly. Master Din no longer had the opportunity to train such a powerful battle pet. This entire Thien-Long Academy is unlikely to have a person with such terrible training ability. Din Zonfong didn't know why Bin said that, but for the time being he still knelt on the ground and watched, not daring to make a move. Holding out one hand to summon a space scroll containing items, Bin grinned and said, "If you want to own such a powerful battle pet, then fine. I don't need to say anything, just think for yourself." Bin said so vaguely, putting his other hand into the piece of paper to search for the weapons he obtained from the Dragon King after receiving the reward from the air. Casually throwing out the Dragon King's high-quality swords like throwing a handful of leaves, Bin lightly said, "Anyone who doesn't want to continue participating can leave right away." Before Din Zonfong could understand anything, he turned around and clasped his hands to finish what he had just said. "If you want to follow me, let me see how you behave, but don't make me wait too long." There are dumber people who don't understand, but there are also people who quickly grasp the main idea. Does he want us to betray Master Din? As soon as the words were said, someone looked down on him. What the hell is Great Master Din? Last time he promised me this and that training but he never showed up. Voices of discontent rang out continuously. He also entrusted the students to take care of my hobby. I see that except for a few rare pets brought by level 9 experts, he basically doesn't have the eye of the war pets that other people need to cultivate. Suddenly, public opinion turned to criticizing himself and seeing disadvantages. Din Zonfong angrily pointed at the source of the voice and cursed. "Don't talk nonsense, you guys are really a bunch of people who forget their sense of gain. What a bunch of people who eat porridge and get kicked over the bridge. If you don't repay my kindness then that's fine. Why do you still want to betray me?" His curse actually angered a group of people who were wavering and had hatred from before. Very quickly, someone came forward and picked up the sword and cursed back. "I hate your habit of openly hitting people. Are you really good at training teachers or something? Everything is tiring and difficult for battle pets like us to do, but in the end, we get an unjust reputation for doing bad things without getting any benefits." The sound of sympathy grew louder and louder, and soon a number of people with swords in their hands approached Din Zonfong but no one stood up to protect him. Panicking and trying to salvage the situation, he yelled at everyone to quickly retreat. "Don't you listen to my orders? Get down quickly." At this moment, only people's hearts are colder than a knife. Just then, someone wanted to give Din Zonfong a double taste of coldness, so he pointed the knife straight at him, stabbed him from the stomach all the way up to his back. "Don't forget to grind, go to hell, you scum," twisting the tip of the knife in your hand to open the door for many others to rush in and brutally kill Din Zonfong. His screams of pain echoed and then died out after just a few minutes. He certainly couldn't survive with that many attackers. A moment later, someone showed the secret identity order that Din Zonfong always carried with him, respectfully presented it to him and politely called Su Grandmaster. This is the card used to promote the power of the 9th grade instructor at Thien-Long School, but Bin doesn't care much. He turned around and simply replied that I don't dare to accept the title of Great Master, and indeed to Bin's level, without taking the exam, people cannot automatically call him that. He had a secret order in his hand, but he told people to call him Mr. 2. Now everyone has the blood of a level 9 trainer on their hands. Do you know what to do? They looked at each other with eyes as if they understood and were a little surprised. Then all clasped their hands together and respectfully followed Master 2's orders. "Today we have never been here before, we have not met Din Zonfong, nor have we seen Mr. 2, we don't know anything. It's true that a professional does the job and it's still very different." Bin happily waved his hand to open up a large, familiar summoning space, not to put a small skeleton inside, but to the bamboo hell beast's heart that had just poked its head out and had to do the work of a professional crematorium. He got used to doing it all the time, and as soon as he saw the corpse, he spit out a fire that burned away all traces. The story of that day did not leak out even a word. The next morning in the Thien 2 8th grade student dormitory, looking at the tray of rice still intact and untouched, her friend was worried. Trum Lin Dong didn't even bother to touch her favorite grilled chicken dish, so she raised her hand and knocked on the door. It's been 2 days since Lin Dong went out, no one has seen her and she can't eat or drink anymore. Inside the room full of messy papers, Trung Lin Dong alone sat with his head in his hands tiredly, ignoring the calls of his classmates outside. If this continues, your body won't be able to handle it anymore. But no matter how she called, Trung Lin Dong did not respond. Locked myself up for 2 consecutive days without any progress at all. Tomorrow I have to submit my thesis defense on a new topic. If I don't submit it, Teacher Din will definitely punish me severely. While Teacher Din has disappeared from the world without a trace, the foolish girl Trung Lin Dong is still worried about her thesis. Principal Trong Thien Long's large hand slammed down on the wooden table, causing everyone present in the meeting room to fall silent. He shouted loudly, "Yesterday I just reminded everyone not to be absent. What's wrong with the 8th grade homeroom teacher? Look at what I said, like the wind blowing in your ears." In the large meeting room, 9 people were ready. Only the last chair where Din Zanfang of grade 8 Thien 2 was still standing. The secretary next to the principal knocked loudly for a long time, but there was no signal from the computer. Since yesterday, the assistant and the emergency contact both said they were nowhere to be found. What about location? The principal turned to ask the secretary to use her authority to locate Din Zanfang's current location, because normally she only has the authority to send and view messages from this homeroom teacher. Seeing the secretary keep typing without raising his head to answer, the principal began to feel impatient and had to speak up first about where Din Zanfang was. Hesitantly speaking, "The location is unknown, teacher." The secretary made an assumption that Mr. Zanfang was missing. Sharp eyes glanced over and asked again what it was like to be missing. Din Zanfang is a rare talent in the world of teacher training. He has now reached level 9. Every time he leaves school, he is protected by a bodyguard. How can you suddenly say that you're missing? You're not a kindergartner, are you? There was a giggle from among the teachers. Everyone was surprised that Din Zanfang, famous for crushing students, had suddenly disappeared or met with some kind of retribution. However, the bodyguards next to him, a level 9 training master, were all decorated battle pets who would dare to act. Just having a disrespectful attitude towards Din Zanfang will make you eat your food. If it's light, if it's heavy, the color will fade. No one can poke him. Thinking about it is right. Who would dare to kill a level 9 trainer? The principal couldn't figure it out, so he turned his hand and pushed out his energy to deploy a formation using yin and yang as the base to search the 4 directions and 8 directions from inside Thien Long School to the outside. The principal's hand fumbled for a while in the formation, causing it to spin blindly in the air several times, but no signal lit up at all. He opened his eyes in shock, but was he really missing? Within a radius of 100 meters there is not a single trace of teacher Din Zanfang? Where are you? As soon as the principal called out, several men in black appeared as if they had been waiting for a long time, respectfully bowing their heads and saying yes. He gritted his teeth and briefly described the situation. In broad daylight, someone dares to kidnap the school's grade 9 training teacher Din Zanfang. You guys should quickly and strictly investigate all the teachers that teacher has ever had contact with. Anyone who dares to openly oppose Thien Long Academy will definitely not be forgiven. As long as they resist, they will have a big belly. Kill me immediately. The group of title-level war pets, dressed entirely in black and with their faces covered, had just received orders to leave. The principal's alarm clock beeped continuously. Realizing that the caller was the vice president of the Master Training Association, Bach Lao, the principal quickly accepted the call, not forgetting to remind everyone around to be quiet so he could hear this important conversation. The image of Bach Lao was enlarged in green color right on the desk, like a statue stroking his beard, and the principal immediately bowed his head respectfully in greeting. It's not often that Bach Lao personally contacts the small school. This time there must be something extremely important. As soon as Bach Lao appeared, he immediately got into the topic, about the disappearance of the 8th grade instructor today. I just give a simple advice, don't get too involved. The principal didn't understand what Bach Lao meant, but he appeared and pointed out that Din Zanfang had definitely done something evil. Letting a great figure like Bach Lao appear and speak for him, while he could have called the wind and rain to close Thien Long School, thought that way, the principal did not argue a word and spoke up sensibly. Apologize and comply with instructions immediately. Although I don't know who Din Zonfang offended regarding the president of the Association of Master Training, I have to admit my mistake first. In the past, Din Zonfang was just an ordinary instructor, but he often neglected students and sometimes did outrageous things. Since Bak Lao said he bumped into someone he shouldn't have touched, he should have let me take care of it on his behalf. The principal mainly wanted to know which big-name character was the one that Din Zonfang encountered, but what he received was only Bak Lao's slow voice. Ask him if he knew that Din Zonfang had done such unethical and cunning things. Why did he cover him up and let him act like a monster? Well, at this point, the principal's mouth was speechless and he couldn't say anything. Because of his reputation as a genius level 9 cultivator, he tolerated Din Zonfang many times. Even if the instructor knew of some things that were not done correctly, he would just ignore them with his eyes open. Now that I was asked a straight face, I was confused and didn't know how to answer, so I had to bow down and apologize more sincerely. Old White's blame is right. That level 9 cultivator was due to his high position and power. Over time, his experience increased but he did not know what to do, so his vision gradually became shallower. From today onwards I will strictly manage within the school. Bak Lao did not directly intervene, only stood up to remind him, so the principal's apology was satisfactory. It's best for him to remember what he just said. If something bad happens, even Bak Lao won't be able to help. The image of the vice president gradually disappeared. Before disappearing, he did not forget to remind him that whatever comes, just let it happen. Protecting your lives is the responsibility of our elders. Don't forget the advice to avoid getting into trouble. The principal said yes for a moment and then let the teachers make arrangements after Din Zonfang went missing. Soon the students were buzzing outside the notice board of Thien Long Academy. On it was written that instructor Din Zonfang of Class 8 Thien 2 proposed to retire early, so Class 8 Thien 2 would have to undergo an evaluation at the teacher exchange meeting. Those with excellent achievements will be admitted to Thien 2 Grade 7. Those with poor achievements who do not meet the standards will be expelled from Thien 2 class. Register for testing at Thien Long Library. Students who do not register for assessment after the specified time will be considered voluntarily dropping out of school. As soon as I don't need to read books anymore. Thien 2's 8th grade boy was punched in the face by his friend. I don't know what's so fun. If you want to pass this assessment, you still have to read books. But what if you don't get the results and repeat the grade to Dia 2 class? Trung Lin Dong stood dumbfounded looking at the announcement, not knowing what to say, ignoring his angry classmates who heard that the local class at the bottom of society was responsible for singing shit to the school's pet animals. Just listening to it makes me feel horrible. Surely none of the Thien 2 class students want to fall into the Dia 2 class. The girl next to Trung Lin Dong screamed in frustration. She had worked hard to get into the Thien 2 class and now she still had to pass the exam. She was afraid that if she couldn't pass the evaluation, she would die. The guys who were promoted by Din Zonfang took this opportunity to attack Trung Lin Dong immediately. I heard her thesis was rejected? Why hasn't this cowardly guy gone away yet? Or take this opportunity to get out of Earth Temple class. Thien Temple class is not suitable for people like you, so don't stay here any longer? Trung Lin Dong's face turned pale and he didn't dare say a word. He bowed and remained silent until his friend had to stand up and help him. Hey, you guys thought you were protected by a monk before, so what do you want to say? Why don't you guys just go and get the hell out of the local temple classroom? That young man still likes to stutter, saying there's nothing wrong without being upset. As soon as she arrived at the competition field, she was trembling so much that she couldn't even do anything right when taming the pet beast, just like the shame of our celestial class. Criticize and criticize them, they laugh and go away. It's true that two useless losers often go together. Anyway, when the training exchange conference ends, I won't see these guys again. Let's just let fate take them out of the game. Trung Lin Dong still maintained her sad expression, leaving her alone to criticize the unreasonable group. Can't do anything more than thank you. But Trung Lin Dong still had to remind her not to get involved with her or else they would target her and then make fun of her, which would be very troublesome. In contrast to your gentle personality, the aggressive long-haired girl is not afraid of those brats. kindly advised Trung Lindong not to listen to their nonsense threats. Placing both hands on Trung Lindong's shoulders showed encouragement, trying to remind her that the previous animal taming theory subject had to be tutored by Lindong to be able to pass the subject. Those guys who are being relied on are just jealous of your achievement of being at the top of the class. Lindong, don't think too much. She said it all, but what remained in Trung Lindong's mind was not much. She sadly left, muttering to herself that these were all things in the past that happened since she first entered school. Now Trung Lindong seems to be at the bottom of the abyss with a fading mood and just wants to be left alone, struggling with the feeling of being powerless to do anything. Who would have given it? She ran over and hugged her waist, making Trung Lindong blush. You'll have to take the exam to know whether you pass or not. So I invited my friend to register for a class at Thien Long Library. What happens next? At that time, Tabin brought a stack of books to the librarian's counter to borrow a dozen more books to review. He did the same thing as yesterday and Din Zanfang had nothing to worry about. The only difference was that he had the ability to summon the instructor's fancy card to borrow valuable books. Behind Tabin is Trung Lindong, who is being pushed inside by his friend. He must see with his own eyes that Lindong has finished registering for class before he can leave with peace of mind. Hearing the noise, Tabin turned to look. Right at the same time Trung Lindong also turned to look at the person standing at the librarian's counter wearing a striking black shirt. Just in time, Trung Lindong didn't want to meet Tabin, but he really needed to meet her. His essays could not be passed through ChatGPT. Only this petite girl could be trusted. As soon as she met Tabin, she realized that Trung Lindong's face was not good, or rather, she looked gloomy, like the end of the world was about to collapse. The surrounding atmosphere was so contaminated that even someone like Tabin who didn't care much had to ask what was wrong that made one person sigh like that. Trung Lindong remained silent and did not speak, only his red-haired friend told him not to mention it anymore. Mr. Din Zanfang threw his friend's thesis into the fish sauce pot, which he worked hard for early in the day, and was mercilessly crushed by the boss. Now that I'm being forced to do some kind of research project to death, forcing my child to do it all over again from A to Z, how can I not look helpless and helpless? The more she talked, the angrier she became for her friend. The red-haired girl complained, who would want to be unlucky enough to accept such a topic that has no beginning or end? Dead and still being nurtured, vague and illusory. Seeing that Tabin didn't want to pay much attention, he still had to nod along and curse. It's truly the most ridiculous thing on earth, with no point at all. Why did it come up like that? Finally, Trung Lindong's gloomy face burst into laughter. Seeing that, her friend lost her anger and wondered if what she said was wrong or not. Tabin immediately took that attitude and said softly that if it was about his thesis, he would have something to do with it. I'm looking for a scholar who has a lot of experience writing articles but doesn't mind co-writing with others. I wonder if you two know anyone who can introduce me. Obviously aiming for Trung Lindong first, he still deliberately asked like that, but he didn't expect her to return to the sadness from before. Lu regretfully said that he really wanted to cooperate and help Tabin, but he was about to divide the class. What class to divide? Tabin was the reason why the Thien 2 class was divided, but what did he know? After a while of the two girls explaining this and that, he slowly pondered. It's strange, the killing of a level 9 instructor not only did not cause a stir in the whole school, but Thien Long School took it for granted. I also thought about preparing for someone to jump out and question me. I didn't expect everything to be so quiet. Could it be that someone tried to force everything to the bottom? Thinking so, he asked, don't the two of you find it strange that the instructor suddenly retired with such a large class division? Red Hair said that the school had announced that there was a problem with inappropriate behavior, so Din Zanfang was sent for investigation by the Association of Teacher Training. Speaking of this, Tabin remembered old Bach's back, mentioning the involvement of the Association of Cultivators. It seemed like thanks to him, everything was quieter than he thought. If so, Tabin can safely continue doing other things. The incident with Thien Zanfang will be as if it never happened. So he changed the subject, asking if the class division test was so difficult that no one was excited. With his head down, This time Trung Lin Dong himself answered that originally the Thien 2 class had already been given a class division test. But the selection rate is 31/100ths, which means that only 100 people will be selected by 30 teachers. Mentioning that those who are not selected will be pushed down to the Earth Temple class, Trung Lin Dong's eyes sparkled as if she was about to cry. The red-haired girl has to come and comfort her friend. Whatever happens will happen. The main thing is to have faith in yourself first. We will definitely pass the test and stay in Thien 2 class. But Trung Lin Dong couldn't cheer up. Basically right now she wasn't in the mood to think about optimistic things, or rather, she didn't feel like she had any hope to do good things. Looking at the child's reserved expression along with Din Zanfang's treatment of other students, made them worship him as an evil god no matter how fierce the abuse was. Tabin thought that Trung Lin Dong was also somewhat influenced by this instructor. Although she was not as submissive as the others, she always had low self-esteem and thought she could not do anything. That's exactly how Din Zanfang often torments students so that they have to beg for him to pay attention. Tabin asked the Dia 2 class again and was told by the red-haired girl that she used to be a student there. Living conditions are very primitive. Students often have to do heavy work that the school says is an opportunity to practice, which is all just fluff. More importantly, a teacher instructs several thousand students at a time. With so many students per year, there are not many opportunities to talk, let alone receive attention and practice and training. If it weren't for Dong Dong's help, I might still be collecting shit in Dia 2 class right now. Trung Lin Dong opened her mouth and said that it wasn't her own effort. At that time, she explained some ordinary training techniques that she knew. It was only because her friend had good abilities that she was able to enter Thien 2 on her own. The little red-haired girl said that everyone in the Dia 2 class tries to get to the Thien 2 class, but no one is as lucky as me to meet Dong Dong and have the opportunity to improve their strength to move forward. Tabin thought for a long time, then suddenly asked, waiting for the two of them to finish registering, could he take me to the Dia 2 class to try it out? Although they didn't quite understand, the two girls agreed to bring Tabin, because the Dia area was basically next to the Thien area. In contrast to the living area of professors and students of Thien 2 classes in the Thien Tone area, which has solidly built high-rise buildings and beautiful architecture fully decorated, the neighboring area is pitifully small. The barren area is where Dia 2 class students and workers live. As soon as they stepped across the boundary, the three easily saw the difference immediately. Just passing the main road separating the heaven and earth areas, they saw a convoy of 4 garbage trucks running from the heaven and earth areas. At first, Tabin didn't pay attention, until the car just passed by with the back door not yet closed. He could clearly smell the stench of blood entering his nose. From the outside, one could clearly see that what was piled up inside the convoy was not trash, but was littered with bloody, dismembered, and generally dead animals. All 4 drove into the gate of the area at breakneck speed, and all 4 followed the corpse of the pet and gathered in an empty lot. As soon as they stopped the car, all 4 pushed the car's rear into one place and threw all the pets' bodies onto the ground. They tried to overlap each other with all kinds of mixed species, from big ones to small ones. Even those that are intact or only parts are pushed out without being filtered. Waiting for the carts to finish their work and leave, the corpses of pet animals in front of the students were piled up in a pile nearly 3 meters high, and were quickly picked up by urgent shouts. The students just ignored the stench and fishy smell and quickly came to get their share. They told each other that the fight was over, hoping that this time they could pick up useful things. The clothes on the students of the local area were different from those of the natural area. They were all cheap, dark-colored outfits. They flocked to the pile of corpses to look for what they needed, just like a festival. Having found an animal that looked like a dead wolf, I was pleased and happy that my furry research project finally had an item to use as a model. Even though it is more or less contaminated with toxins, it can still be used when cooled and cleaned. Amidst the crowd of black carcasses, a wild boar with broken fangs let out a few weak squeals and was lovingly picked up by a student. Congratulating yourself on how lucky you were to pick up a living pet, your friends soon gathered to congratulate you. Its injuries came from the pet-pet competition. The wound was fatal. Being thrown away here and still alive was not easy. They reunited and quickly treated it. Later, everyone practiced beast control together with this pet beast. Looking at the Dia 2 students picking up things brought back from Theme 2, one student smacked his lips and said that they were really pitiful. The waste from the Theme 2 class that no one needed had become treasures in their eyes. But only a few had that thought, while the students next to them were indifferent and didn't think this scene was pitiful or anything. Isn't it because they don't have enough capacity that they have to endure this situation? If you want to blame yourself, think about why you weren't accepted into that Theme 2 class in the first place. Asia, we're the pitiful ones here. We can't eat well and sleep well, we can't gather pets, and we drove so far to bring them here just to earn some competition points. Tabin looked at the scene before him without saying a word. Rather, he was lost in thought. He was the owner of a pet shop that welcomed thousands of animals every day, both alive, exhausted, and with other injuries. Together. But no matter what level the pet animal is at, Tabin has never seen the scene of others trampling on each other to compete for the dead animals. Standing there dumbfounded for a moment until the red-haired girl asked, he was startled and turned around to look. You asked, didn't you want to come here? Why are you standing there blankly? Do you need me to lead you further? As soon as he regained his composure and told him to come right away, Trung Lin Dong hesitantly asked, are you unhappy with this scene? Taking the scale of Thien Long Academy, for those who come from small provinces like Tabin, this school is at the top of the CHOP class, with a far-reaching reputation that everyone wants to study at least once. But Thien Long shouldn't have let so many students fall into this situation. Has it always been like this? Tabin asked. The two girls slowly pondered what was going on. But at her young age, Trung Lin Dong could only say that before she entered school, this happened. Her friend added, reminding her that before Dong Dong, every time he brought his pet beast here, he would stay and take the time to teach her and her friends some spells and knowledge about how to control beasts. Later, thanks to those times, her friend was able to advance to the Thien 2 class, so she was always grateful for her friend. As she was talking, suddenly someone was beaten and passed by the two of them. He was wearing a district uniform, his face was full of injuries and he screamed in pain. As soon as he landed, someone from heaven greeted him, trampling on him with delight. What are you shouting? Shout louder, let me see. He raised his hands to cover his face in endurance, his mouth mumbling sounds of pain but not protesting, making the other guy even more happy. Call someone nearby to come and see how stubborn this guy is. The second guy loomed over, waving a baseball bat in his hand, cackling and telling you to stay away. Punching and kicking with your hands is not fun, leave it to me. That strutting look didn't look like a joke, making Trung Lin Dong and his friend panic. What do they want to do? Do they want to beat people to death? He slammed the stick down with a vicious look filled with pleasure as he unleashed his bestiality on others. He didn't care about the eyes of the people next to him. But unfortunately, someone was paying attention, so the stick that was supposed to fall on the student's head suddenly disappeared. With his hands empty, he was bewildered and unhappy. He turned back to see that Tabin had snatched his stick. Then he fiercely asked, who are you to dare to disturb my pleasure? Just a passerby, Tabin had no intention of returning the stick to the other person. Calmly ask, is it fun to bully people? They do it when they're happy, but the part that makes them the funniest is the word bullying. Both guys held their stomachs and laughed like they had heard the funniest story in the world. A handful of local students' hair was beaten until it turned purple and bruised. The guy with the parted hair kindly showed Tabin his enduring appearance. What do you see? This guy completely volunteered to let us punch him. Why do you blindly step in like that, intending to be a hero? Having been beaten until he couldn't even see his appearance, that classmate still clasped his hands and asked Tabin not to get involved. They agreed that in the future they would pass on the technique to help me prepare for the entrance exam, just one more step away from the classroom door. Please don't interfere and go. Did you see that? The two bangs contemptuously curled up his lips and smiled complacently. He only needed to release a few resources to be able to comfortably call rain and wind in the local temple area. This young man has never experienced it before, so he's so blind? Trung Lin Dong couldn't believe that this group of people could do such a barbaric thing, at least she hadn't seen this scene before. And your friend is a person who comes from a place seething with anger. Isn't the kind of animal that does such a despicable thing afraid of being dragged to revenge by others? Surely this guy didn't have any good education to have that kind of thinking. Throwing the stick on the ground as a declaration of war, Tabin lightly said that if Trung Lindong felt they were too much, why don't they teach people the true training technique? She didn't understand why Tabin mentioned her, but she was still surprised that the other two guys were strutting around, raising their chins and asking if he wanted to cause trouble. Our Mr. Tiu Fong is the representative of Thien 2's 4th grade education department. We advise you that it's best to know how to control your strength. Oh, your dad is so scared again. Tabin curled his lips and smiled as he prepared to go to work. Would Tiu, who was as big as a cartwheel, dare to bet against him? If we win, hand that local boy over to me. The challenge poked him, he broke his arms and asked with an annoyed face, then what if you lose? Don't even think about begging and getting out, okay? I will replace this brat if you will take my place. Dare or not dare say a word? Do you think Tabin dares? Hearing that Tabin dared to clash directly with the people of the Thien area, the two girls behind him spoke in unison, telling him to consider. One named Tiem Tu Sin of grade 4 is famous for liking to play bloody games. The other named Tiu Thong who dares to do anything because he wants to show off. As soon as he said it, he saw that these bets were a loss of capital, and what he meant was that the object of fighting these two guys was Trung Lin Dong Company. She shyly told him in a low voice that she had no chance of winning against this group. The friend next to him also spoke up to remind Tabin that Dong Dong's condition is not good right now, he is not playing focused. Let's just apologize and then we can go back to Thien area to prepare for the class division test. Realizing that he was also from the Thien area, Tiu Fong Hu curled his mouth and criticized that it was true that the dog in mourning often cried for help. I made the guy next to me point the finger at everyone and cursed you guys to stop messing with my big brother. Tabin ignored these childish words, he just glanced at Trung Lin Dong and told her in a low voice to believe his words. These guys are absolutely not your opponents. Tabin looked at the students in the area kneeling and suffering, not daring to raise their faces, then asked the girl, don't you want to save people? Lin Dong did not object, her eyebrows were furrowed as if she had been arguing for a long time. Tabin understands her personality, all Lin Dong needs right now is just a little encouragement to move forward. His nod yet simply helped her make a decision. Clenching his fists with a confident look in his eyes as he looked up, Trung Lin Dong didn't refuse anymore, gently saying, I will compete. That determined attitude made Tiu Fong Hu sneer. His useless mouth could only say beautiful words and was useless. Later I will tell you what is called cruelty. After threatening him, he turned around and told them all to follow him down a small road, gradually separating from the crowded area. The farther we go from the housing area, the darker the roads become. When we reach Trung Lin Dong, we and our companions also feel the surrounding atmosphere filled with a threatening smell as dozens of pairs of eyes on both sides of the road stare at our every move. Miss. The other group looked like a group of street gangsters or debt collectors, standing next to the bunch of smelly pets, keeping the howling animals inside. The deeper you go, the more scared you become. Trung Lin Dong and you have to hold each other's hands tightly to move the momentum. However, that was a bit redundant for Tabin. He put his hands in his pockets and calmly led the way, his whole body emitting a stream of energy, preparing to rub if anyone came closer than 3 meters to the group. Not forgetting to remind the two girls not to worry, no one in this place can touch them. Especially Trung Lin Dong. Tabin just turned around and said, just focus on competing. She regained determination in her eyes, nodded and continued to a closed underground arena. The rules in this underground arena popularized by Tiu Fong Hu still follow the practices of Thien Long Academy above. 3 games of beast control and beast fighting. In the first game, the two had to manipulate the wild beast's psychology so that it would obey and become a minion for their command. The second is to test the ability to enhance with strange treasures and finally pit the 2 beasts against each other. Whoever defeats the other will bring victory to that beast's owner. Trung Lin Dong nodded to say he understood. Very quickly, from the darkness, there was a muscular man pushing 2 cages stacked on top of each other. Both were red-eyed wild beasts fanning aggressively. One resembled a large brown bear, the other resembled a land lizard. Seeing it, Trung Lin's face turned pale, especially when he saw this green animal poking its sharp claws out of the cage, wanting to escape and scratch anyone. Tiu Fonghu, wearing training gloves and smiling triumphantly, introduced that this was the most chaotic and dangerous underground arena in the area. Don't tell me you expected to receive a gentle beast in this underground place. Greenhouse flowers like you make me want to pee my pants just looking at them. Trung Lin Dong did not answer Fonghu, because her breathing was coming in rapid rhythms, trying to keep her legs from going weak. The memory of being scratched by a wild animal was both painful and frightening, still clearly imprinted. In Trung Lin Dong's mind, that was also the reason why she was made fun of by Din Zan Fong's followers. Every time she faced a wild animal, she was haunted by old memories, and her body trembled as if she had a fever. Now I can only hold myself steady on the floor, but I can't escape the guys who are forcing people to come and watch. They shouted for Trung Lin Dong to go down. Weakling standing like a piece of wood was what they cursed the most. The atmosphere was boiling with disparaging sounds that reached the red-haired girl. Looking at the ring with worry, the girl thought this was going to be a failure. Trung Lin Dong had been hurt in the past. She should not have gone on stage. Bin, on the contrary, did not see the need to bring Trung Lin Dong at all. He said it would be okay to let her slowly recover. The red hair frowned and looked at him unhappily. It was clearly just a stranger her friend met on the train. How could she understand her qualifications and circumstances? But the words from Bin's mouth were like trying to avoid other things, asking her if she had ever heard the story of the glass vase and the fish. Bewilderedly asked again, not understanding why he brought it out at this hour. As soon as the girl asked, Bin immediately answered. Long ago, there was a person who kept a fish in a transparent vase. The fish didn't know it was being held captive. It didn't see the glass but kept hitting its head and wanting to swim out. Soon its head split open. A lot of blood was shed, but it still couldn't escape. There was no end in sight. So with its bloody head, the fish could only imagine that the world outside this vase was fake that he had set up. So if you don't need to go out and still live, you don't need to go out to do anything. In the end, the life of the fish living in the jar ended like that. Hearing the story made me feel frustrated, but the way Bin told it in a light tone really made the red hair angry. She immediately asked Bin why he wanted to talk about that. If we lose, there's a high chance we'll all get punched. The story does not include the next part as a matter of course because the mouth is always a distance away, which of course is enough.